So, have you ever stopped to think about how real world-changing progress actually happens? I'm not talking about a slightly better smartphone, but the kind of massive leap that completely reshapes how we live. Is it just some lone genius having a eureka moment, a total fluke? Or is there something more, like a recipe we can actually follow? All right, so that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to deconstruct that recipe for progress. First, we'll take a look at the single biggest transformation humanity's ever seen. Then, we'll zoom right in to the mind of the inventor. After that, we'll pull back out to see the bigger picture, the ecosystem that makes it all possible. And finally, we'll figure out how we can use this recipe right now. So, to figure out where we're going, we've got to understand where we've been. And there's really no better place to start than the Industrial Revolution. This was the ultimate case study in changing everything. And that's not just hyperbole. Think about it. For most of human history, life was, well, pretty much the same, generation after generation. And then, bam! In what amounts to a blink of an eye, historically speaking, the whole world was turned upside down. Just look at this graph. It's wild. For hundreds, even thousands of years, global GDP per person is just flat, a flat line. And then, boom, it goes vertical. It's a hockey stick of progress. This wasn't just a little bit of growth. This was a fundamental rewrite of the human story. So what was the Industrial Revolution, really? Well, at its heart, it was a massive shift from, cottage industries, making stuff by hand, to the factory system. We're talking steam power, new ways to make iron, all these new technologies converging at once to totally change how we make, well, everything. And this is so important. This didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It wasn't an accident. It needed a very specific set of ingredients, kind of like baking a cake. And it turns out 18th century Britain had the perfect pantry. They had plenty of food, so not everyone had to be a farmer. They had smart, skilled people ready to build businesses. They had canals and roads to move stuff around. They were sitting on piles of coal and iron. Plus, they had a stable government and, crucially, the money to get these big ideas off the ground. Okay, so that's the big picture, right? The societal setup. But let's zoom in. Let's get personal. What was going on inside the heads of the actual inventors? What's that cognitive spark that lights the fire? Well, every great idea starts with something psychologists call a problem space. It sounds a bit academic, but it's really simple. It's like a mental map. You're at point A, which is the problem, and you want to get to point B, the solution. The invention, the innovation, that's the journey you take through that uncharted territory in your mind. And to navigate that map, our brains use two different gears. You've got convergent thinking, that's your logical, focused, problem-solving mode. Think of it as zeroing in on the single best answer. Then you've got divergent thinking. That's the messy, creative, brainstorming mode, where you're just throwing out tons of possibilities, no matter how wild they seem. Now here's the kicker. Real creativity, the kind that changes the world, isn't about picking one or the other. It's not about being just a dreamer or just an engineer. The real magic happens in the dance between them. You have to be able to dream up all those crazy ideas and then have the discipline to narrow them down, to test them, and find the one that actually works. But a brilliant mind is just a seed, right? And a seed can't grow on concrete. It needs fertile soil. That's where the innovation ecosystem comes in. It's about the bigger picture, the environment that allows thousands of those brilliant minds to thrive all at once. So, remember those ingredients for the Industrial Revolution? Well, this is the modern-day version. Experts at places like the Royal Society have laid it all out. You need stable, long-term policies. You need a mix of different people and ideas. You need scientists from different fields actually talking to each other. And of course, you need the physical stuff, the labs and facilities to do the work. And this is where we hit a major snag in today's system. Look at the life of a deep tech company. We're talking about the really hard stuff, based on big scientific breakthroughs. It can take, 15, even 20 years to become a mature, profitable company. But the people with the money, the venture capitalists, they often want their money back in 6 to 8 years. See the problem? There's this huge, dangerous gap in the middle, the scale-up gap, where amazing ideas can just die on the vine because they need patient, long-term money. And we're not talking about a small problem here. In the UK alone, this gap is estimated to be about £4 billion every single year. Just think about that. That's £4 billion of world-changing ideas, new medicines, new energy sources that might be getting starved of cash right when they need it most. And it's not just about the cash either. You need the physical stuff, the actual buildings. You need cutting-edge labs. You need massive data centers. You need a reliable energy grid. You even need good housing and transport so the brilliant people can live and work together. This is the bedrock, the foundation for everything else.
Okay, so let's recap. We've looked back at history. We've peeked inside the inventor's mind, and we've sketched out the ecosystem that supports it all. So what now? How do we take this whole recipe and actually use it to tackle the massive challenges we're facing in the 21st century?
Because at the end of the day, here's the big takeaway. Progress isn't magic. It's not a lucky accident. It's a formula. You have to learn from the past, you have to train our brains to be both wildly creative and ruthlessly logical, and you have to intentionally build the entire system around it. The money, the culture, the infrastructure to let those big ideas bloom. And you know what the biggest obstacle is? It's us. It's our obsession with the short term. For this recipe to work, we have to have patience. We have to think in terms of decades, not quarterly reports. It needs a steady, long-term strategy, not a bunch of separate projects that get funded one year and cut the next.
So that leaves us with one final pretty heavy question. We have the recipe, we know the ingredients for progress, but actually using it, that takes a collective will. It takes a commitment to thinking long-term, to working together, and to trusting the science. In an age that feels so focused on the here and now, do we still have what it takes to build the future?